quick introduction of Kay. Kay's been with the Genealogy Center for a good number of years. She provides a lot of support and assistance and advice and counsel on scanning photographs, Adobe Photoshop, as well as other things to do with the operations of the department. She has a particular interest in photographs, particularly old photographs. And I think that's what drives her expertise in all of these Adobe Photoshop and GIMP and some of these other programs. So without further ado, I'm going to turn my camera off and I'm going to turn it over to Kay. Thanks so much for presenting this evening, Kay.
Okay, thanks, Kurt. And can we hear me?
Yes.
All right. All right, well, welcome back, everybody. And I bet you're really excited to learn some things about cloning. Before I talk about cloning, I want to talk a little bit about my lists that I compiled. This is a list of anything pertaining to photographs that I've found interesting and helpful over the years. I want to direct your attention to a couple of things on it. There is a book on it, and I'm probably not going to pronounce the word or the name. It's by a Katrine Eisman, and it's called Photoshop Restoration and Retouching. And it was published quite a while ago. It has been updated, and it mainly ties in with the Adobe Photoshop that comes with Creative Suite. However, there are some things in it that talk about photographs and some of the problems and how to fix them, and you can do some of that in Elements. It is a very good book. Another thing I want to direct your attention to on the list under other stuff, if you are interested at all in graphic art, there is an amazing website. It is the Computer Graphics Society. You do not have to be a member to access some of the things that are there. They have a sort of message board that tells about the latest in graphic art things. It's a very amazing, interesting website. So that's enough about my little list. And let's talk about the clone tools. And that's with the plural on it. And one of the words that comes to mind when I talk about the clone tool or demonstrate the clone tool is patience. You need to have a lot of patience, a lot of coffee, or your other favorite beverage when you're working on the clone tool. So I'm going to open up an image. This image is part of our collection, and I've used it for many years to demonstrate. And when I first saw it, as you can tell, we haven't done anything to it. It's still in the condition that it was in when we got it. But I thought, what an amazing image to use to practice cloning. So let's look at what we have here. We have, as I zoom in on it, we have this big chunk of things that gone from the image. And when we go in closer to the face, you'll see that someone has marked all over the face and down into the chest area of the image. Down in here. So the way I approach something like this, if you've been in any of the other sessions, I usually start out with enhancing. In this case, I do not, because it will be easier for me to fix the image first with the clone before I enhance it. When you look at these photographs, you need to keep in mind that they are all unique, and what can fix one won't fix another. This is an older one, probably the early 1900s sometime. And when I get a little bit closer, these photographs are easier in a way to fix because they have a slight fuzziness to them. Photographs from the 1950s, 60s, 70s onward are sharp, and they're harder to fix because they have such hard edges. So we have a little bit of a leeway with this kind of an image. I also want to draw your attention to something else in particular about this image, is look at the texture on her skin. She has a rough texture on that skin. And when we're cloning, we need to keep that in mind because we don't want to clone something that's smooth on the rough skin because people will see it. And the object of the game, what you want to finish with, is something that when people look at it, they will not be able to tell that it has been restored. Now, what I'm going to do tonight, we're going to stick mainly with this photograph. I'm going to go through how I actually clone things. And then I've got a magical thing to show you at the very end. So the way I start is I always start with what I think is going to be the easiest thing to fix because this takes a while and I want to get the fast things out of the way. The fastest thing is going to be this patch over here. And I've said this in the previous sessions, depending on the version that you have, there might be some tools that some people have and others don't. So I'm going to show you a number of different methods that you can use to fix that patch. Some will work better than others. So the first tool that we're going to use is the old-fashioned clone tool, and that is located over here in the Enhance. It looks like a stamp. From the time that Photoshop and not just Adobe Photoshop, but some other Photoshops, the clone tool was usually in those software programs. And if you've got any kind of a software program at all, you really need some kind of a clone tool. So let's click on this clone tool. This is the old-fashioned clone tool. Down at the bottom, since I have clicked on the clone tool, are the clone tool options. This is a clone tool. This is a pattern. We're not even going to we'll talk about the pattern. Here is the size of the brush or a selection of brushes. Because I'm using the clone tool on this particular image, I'm going to use a soft edge brush. We only have one layer, so we're only going to sample one, so I'm taking that off. This is the size and the opacity, which you can turn down, but for this right here, we're not going to turn it down. We're going to keep this one at the normal, and right behind the photograph is the word align. You want to make sure it's checked. That thing underneath that says clone overlay, what that is if I had that checked, my cursor tool, the little circle there, would give me a preview of what I'm going to put down. I don't like that tool. The way I do this, it kind of gets in the way and it doesn't really represent what you're actually going to see. So for tonight, I'm not going to check that. So This is one way to start fixing this tool. And a long time ago, this would be the only way that we had. In Windows, you hold the Alt key down, and when you do, your cursor changes. And we are going to sample our source. And this is the source here. So I'm going to click left on my mouse and select a source, go over here and start filling it in. Now you notice I'm picking up some things from here, and that's because my brush is too big. And now my brush is too small. So, and you notice that there's a little cross underneath it. That's because it's aligned. That's what that cross is telling you. So wherever I move my circle, it moves with me. So, and I can go up here, select some darker, put in some darker up there, fill it in, and just keep moving back and forth till that's covered. Now, in the ideal world, when you get that done, then you would go back and make it look better. You would get rid of, because when you do this, you're going to find that it's not perfect, and you're going to want to go back and correct some of the mistakes that you yourself had made. So that is the clone tool, and I call it the grandfather or grandmother of the other tools. And when you're doing this, also keep an eye out on what's going on the image. Make sure that you can see the difference in the textures, the skin, the hair, the cloth that are going on in the photograph. So we're going to go back, we're going to revert. Now, here's another thing that you can do. We can select the eyedropper and pick an area, and this palette's going to change, but not much. Then we can go over here to our layer, and we're going to add and layer. And we're going to work on that layer. We go over to our paintbrush. Now I'm painting this. This is not a clone. I'm painting this area in. And I have matched the color on some of it. I'm staying away from the hair. Now, because I have put it on a separate layer, I can adjust the contrast and stuff of it on it. Now, if you'll notice, it's smooth. So it's not like the rest of it, the rest of the texture. What I do is I merge it down, then I go back to my clone tool, and I turn the opacity down a little, and maybe make the clone just a little bit bigger. Do an Alt and put some of the texture up there that's on the paint. So that is another option. Let's revert back to where we started. Now, in Adobe Photoshop that comes with Creative Suite, there is a tool called the patch. And it's similar to what I'm going to show you now. This is our lasso tool. I'm going to draw around here. I'm going to, there's our line that I've selected that. I'm going to click right and feather. And I'm taking the feather, it's set at 45. We're going to go down a little bit smaller. That's going to soften the edges so it will blend better. I'm going to layer via copy. Now we have another layer. Move it. And I'm going to move that up there. And once again, I can adjust it. To sort of match. Now, the neat thing about this is that I can go over here and I can just keep hitting duplicate layer. And I can get a lot of these things up here and just kind of fill it in that way. Now,
Okay. We have a question from one of our participants. Robin asks that she doesn't understand how you know what size to use for the feather radius.
well, I guess if it were at the higher the number, the more that's going to be taken off of the edge. And because we're doing such a small selection, you don't want it set up to 45 because then you're going to have a really big, what's called a vignette. And I know that everyone's seen a vignette. In fact, we'll make one later on tonight, but it's just where the edges of the image start disappearing into the background the further out that it gets. And it's a real nice effect, but you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that much on this. So you kind of have to, this small of an area, you want to be with you want to do a small number. And that's, you just kind of have to guess. Small number. Oh, go ahead.
Would it be fair to say doing a little bit of experimenting married with some experience? The more experience you have, the more experimenting you do.
Yeah, you know, usually for this small of an area, you don't want it up into 45s. Yeah, the 45, I'll show you later when we're almost done here. The 45 would be for this entire oval.
Okay.
So anyway, so then you've got this, and we are over the hairline. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge this down, merge this down, and I still have this layer. And I have not talked about this before, but up here is called, I don't think I have, a mask. I'm going to apply the mask to that layer. I'm going to go over here and make sure that my palette is black and click on my paintbrush. And I can make sure I've got that clicked, and I can start getting rid of some of the stuff that I put there so that I can do more detail work on it. That's what this, the mask does. And we're going to get rid of that, and we're going to revert. Now for the really magical tool. This is one of my new favorite tools down here, Content Aware Move tool. This came along with, I believe, version 11. And I clicked on it, and down here, your options are, you want this new, I'm going to show you both the move and the extend. We have the healing and transfer on drop. Now, I'm going to, like I did with the lasso, I'm going to go around this area, and it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not going to go into the hair. So I've got this selected. And I press down on my left mouse key, and I move this. And then I come over here, make sure that my cursor turns to this little arrow. I shrink it down as low far as I can get it. And when I click on this green check mark, watch what happens over here. It put something there. And then all I would have to do is make sure that I'm not selected over here, is go back and clone this little dot out. And I can just keep doing that around all of these circles till this is all filled in by the computer. The computer is looking at this and making the choices for me. And it's a really interesting tool. Now you can do the extend.
Okay, Kay, before you move on, we have a question. What do you call this tool that you just did?
It is I'll hold my cursor over it so hopefully it pops up. It is the Content Aware Move tool. It came along with, I believe, version 11. So it looks like, I'm not sure what this icon is, so little, I don't know what it is. It's a scissor or cross swords or something. But it's a nifty tool.
It sure does look like magic when you did that.
It does, doesn't it? Well, it does. I got some more with that tool you'll just be amazed at. Let's click on the extend, because I had the move turned on that. We're going to turn on the extend, and the move turns off. And like we did when we used the lasso tool, select an area, and we move it. So it's moving the opposite direction. The difference with this one is you have to get this selection operative, you have to do the green check now. And then go up to your select and feather, like we did. And gonna layer via copy. So there is that. And we can move it around. Oops, we can't move it around with that tool. But as soon as we move it, what it does, instead of going over here and hitting the duplicate, it makes a duplicate all by itself. So that is part of the Content Aware Move tool. That's the extend. So I'm going to merge those down, and we'll leave those alone. If these should be darker and they should blend better, but we're going to move on to the next clone tool. Keeping with my method of working, we're going to start on the easiest part of this photograph after that. When you're doing something, a face, you need to be very aware of when you start working on the eyes, the nose, and the mouth, because any little slip and you're going to change their appearance. So, and you're going to make mistakes. So there's nothing wrong with going back and correcting your mistakes. So we're going to leave that area for last. The easy part is right here. This is the easiest part. I'm going to go over to this tool up here where I'm pointing with my cursor. Right above the clone tool is something that I believe is a Band-Aid. This is the spot healing brush tool. I'm going to click on it. And my tool options are down here. There are two clone tools in this. There is the spot healing brush and the healing brush. And there is a slight difference between both of them. And just a little bit of warning, these tools are, according to Adobe, intelligent. So they do things for you too, and sometimes they do things that you don't necessarily want them to do. So the spot healing brush is checked. And there are some options here. We're not going to create a texture. We are going to look at the proximity and the content aware. Also, with this particular tool, we have a brush, it is a hard brush. So we're going to leave that hard brush there. And let's see what kind of a size we got. Okay, we're going to leave the size alone. We have one layer, so we're not going to mess with that. And that's all of our options. Now, when you clone, get used to using the wheel in the middle of your mouse, because you're going to zoom in and zoom out the whole time that you're using this. So let's look at what this the spot healing brush does. What the spot healing brush does is because it's an intelligent tool, it selects the source for you. And because we have the proximity match picked, it selects a source that's close to where I put my cursor. So watch this little dot that I've got here. I'm going to click on it with my left click. It is gone. So it picked the right thing. We're going to pick this. Usually the spot healing brush, here's another one. This may not work so well. It's okay. Usually, it is better for small sections, but you need to learn how to maneuver your cursor when you're going. You can do a number of different techniques. Some will work and some won't. You can just go along like this, just clicking it, dot, dot, dot. You can drag it, but when you do this, watch that it doesn't develop a pattern. You don't want a pattern to show up. You can do a jiggy-jaggy, and there's a problem there, so we need to go back and click. You need to recognize those problems when they pop up. Or you can do a cross thing and just kind of go around it. But this is, of all the clone tools, and the content aware is not, or the content aware move tool, I don't believe it's considered a clone tool, but it certainly does some of the things the clone tool does. But this is one of my favorites because it's, especially on this older photograph, it's really doing a good job. We can do really long ones. And once again, we watch for a pattern forming. You probably will have to go back and keep on hiding things. Just moving along. And as you can tell, this is why I said earlier, you need to be patient. This is not a quick thing to do. And occasionally, you probably need to save this as you're doing it. And you can use different kinds of strokes with the spot healing tool. So we went around that easy area. And we're backing up to get a look. Gonna see some spots. One of the things that I find interesting is that the more I clean up, the more I see needs to be fixed. And that's just one of those things. So let's switch down to the content aware with the spot healing. Now the content aware is also an intelligent tool, but instead of selecting the source within or close to that circle, it just kind of randomly selects from wherever. So what you might get, and I don't know if anything will show up, when you're doing this, you might get all of a sudden, you might get something from over here. And so you have to watch what the smart tool, what the intelligent tool is doing. Oh, there. It put this down. So, you know, that's what I'm trying to fix. So it did give me another line. So you need to watch that with that tool when you have the content aware. I think the proximity works better for what we're doing right now. See, let's give this a try. We'll go up. We're getting into some darkness, and that's going to be a little bit harder, maybe. Okay, so that's the spot healing brush. And when you go up here on the face, there's some other areas that we can probably fix with the spot healing. This area, we'll just do a real quick zip, oops, on that. This area, maybe here. And we'll take a chance on that. Maybe not. We'll back up on that. So let's look at the healing brush. Now, the healing brush is also an intelligent tool. And I have this set at 30. It is aligned, and that means that it's going to do something similar to the clone tool. The brush setting should be, the default should be, the hardness should be at 100%, and the spacing should be somewhere between 24 and 25. The roundness is this, you can change the roundness, but it doesn't, for this, it doesn't matter. The source will be the sample, and down here where the mode is, make sure it says replace if you have a texture like we're working with this face. If you had that set at normal, it would want to smooth that area out, and you don't want it, in this case, you don't want it to be smooth. You want to pick up the roughness.
Okay.
Yes.
There's a question. Do the tools prefer a specific percentage, 35% versus 135%?
As far as the size, it depends on what you really don't want to use a large, if you're doing cloning, you're doing really small detail work usually. And you want that brush to be fairly small. Sometimes you go really small when you're zooming, you go right into those pixels, and you want to just work on 1 pixel or 2 pixels at a time, so that brush needs to be pretty small. With the healing brush and the spot healing brush, they blend. The clone doesn't. It just copies and pastes over things, which is why I always have my edges blended on a clone, because you want everything to blend, and that's hard to do when you've got pixels. And I don't know if I answered that question, but you need to. Yes.
Great information. I believe at least a nuance, or maybe even the direct question, Kay, might be about how far does one zoom in, maybe? Do you go into this pixel level when you want to do, use one of the tools, or should you stay more out? Should you blow it up?
Okay. You want to, okay, I'm saving certain areas for last because it goes faster if I do that. If you have a problem around the mouth and the nose, around the nose and up here in the eyes, you want to zoom. You keep your eye on the area. Right here is the area, and I've got this. This brush is probably set too high right now, but I'll show you. Well, I'll just go. I'll make it smaller. You want to zoom in on this problem and kind of remember what you're doing when you get in there, because when you get really close, you're going to lose track of all these pixels are going to look like pixels. So we know that we want to correct this dark mark. So I'm going to, now that I've zoomed in, and which brush okay, I have the healing brush. So I'm going to pick one next to it, pick one next to it, and let's try down here a little bit. And then go back out to see what I just did. So you keep going, and that one needs to be probably a little bit worked on a little bit more. But when you're doing these kind of fixes on the lips, you need to get in as close as you can, and your brush needs to be pretty small to fix those so that they're gone. On these areas up here, you don't need that small of a brush. You can up it just a little bit. And I've got the healing brush, and go back and forth with the healing brush. Take pixels from all over the place to cover that up. The spot brush works better on this area.
So would it be fair to say that, again, Kay, it's about a little bit of experimentation with a lot of experience and the context of what part of the photograph you're working on?
Yeah, you just have to, you're going to end up using, once upon a time, all you had available was that clone brush. And that left a lot of problems. But these healing brushes are really good when they blend things. But you have to learn which one works the best on certain things. And for this area with the lips, you need to probably use a combination of the old-fashioned clone brush and the spot healing, because you want that brush to be really small on this area so that will disappear. And I see right here, this area here is white. It's the only white area there. So we'll move it over here and make it go away. But So when you back up, I don't see that white area now. So it does clean up. You just have to, it takes a while to clean it up and to get it the way you want it.
Sure. Thank you.
So it's not easy, or it's not, you find like this image, I consider myself lucky that I found this because it had everything that I would need to practice with the clone tool. Just trying different ones out. Now I'm back to the spot healing and it works wonderful. I would have to, over in this area here, be a little bit more careful because there's a combination of shadow and hair and a pencil mark. So I'm just going to click on that area. So hopefully that helps you understand. I really do favor the spot healing brush. So are there any questions? Because I want to show them a couple of things here. I want to show them the vignette over here. We'll pretend that this is all fixed, and we will pretend that I've enhanced it. Well, we'll enhance it. Over here, yes.
So there was a question that just popped in from Dolores. She asked, do you have a finished picture after you get through working on it to show us what it will look like?
No, actually, I don't have that with me. I do have it, but I don't have it. I could bring it next week or the next meeting to show you. This takes about, this particular image took about 2 hours to do.
Okay.
Let's go over here to the select tool. And down at the select tool, I have an option down here of a rectangle and an oval. And it's the oval that I want to show you the vignette look, sort of. So I have my cursor, which is now across. And I'm going to just drag it. And I'm making a oval. Now, in order to get this where I want, I hold my space bar down and move it with my cursor. And you can do that in Mac too. The space bar works in Mac. And I can move it up with the space bar until I get it where I want it. So I've got it where I want it, and I'm going to right click. And here we go with the feather. We're going to give it a 50.
So just a quick question as you're doing that, Kay.
Yes.
Someone asked, don't you have to save the image as you're working on it and at the end?
Yes, well, you should, because, 2 hours worth of working, if you're working along and you put in an hour's worth and your machine locks up, you're going to lose everything that you've done for the last hour. So yeah, you should periodically save what you have, a TIFF, not a JPEG.
Sure, thank you.
And let's click, we will select inverse. Now, the trick here is you're going to delete what you just selected. So if you notice the edge got kind of a hazy look. So that is what is called a vignette. And it gives when you're all done, it gives a nice little it gives a finishing product to it. So that is that image.
That looks pretty cool, okay? Another question popped in specific to the hair. How do you fix your hair?
Oh, hair. You notice I didn't, there are a couple of different ways that you could do it. First of all, I wouldn't, On this particular one, I would not do the enhancement first. I would wait and I would do it with all the lightness. You can clone in with your clone or your healing brush, because you don't really know over here. I'm assuming that because over on this side, there's hair here. So I'm assuming that she's not lopsided here with her hair, that she was trying to be stylish, and probably it goes around like here. So you can attempt to copy some of the good hair out here. Or you could take you could select some of the hair over here, copy it, paste it over here, and soften the edges so that it blends in. Because you're working with something that on the background, when you fix the patch, that was relatively simple because it was just a background. But this is, you're putting hair there that's not there. So you're going to have to be creative and blend it in with what is already there. You can just clone down here. You can even go back to that content aware brush, and I got an extend. I don't want the extend. Move. And do a content aware. Let's see what happens with the content aware on the hair. Move it down. So it kind of put that in there, and then you can go back and do some cloning so that this area's got a little bit of the dark that matches that area above it. Stretch some of this up in here in the edges so that you don't see it.
A couple more questions popped in, Kay.
All right.
That's neat what you just demonstrated. First question was, what is that dark bump at the top of her forehead? I think it's a hair curl, isn't it?
It's a curl, and that's why I named it. I gave her a name. This is from our collection. She didn't have a name. I named it Girl with the Curl.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. That's there. We're not going to clone that away, but yeah.
Right.
Okay.
The second question referred back to the save question. Scott asks, some software have an auto save option that saves your work for you. Is there an auto save option in Adobe?
Not that I know of. I wish there were, I don't believe so. And if somebody out there knows different, please let us know, because it would be handy. I have lost a number of things because I didn't save. So I don't believe Adobe has a.
Could we try something really quick?
What?
Could you go up to edit?
Edit?
Yeah, and see if there's preferences.
Oh, preferences. Yeah, there's preferences.
Is there an auto?
Here's this. Let's see what this says.
Okay.
In the savings file. On first save, I don't see anything that says anything about
Auto.
auto. So I believe the answer to your question, unless I'm missing something, is no. I've never heard of having one.
It might be available on later options because the Google says so.
Really?
Yeah, it says that that's where it should be if it is an option.
Oh, okay. But it might be coming. It's one of those things.
Yeah. So I think it depends on the version.
Okay. All right. I want to show you some magic now. Content aware move. It's This photograph is of Central Park in 1900, and it was taken by a man by the name of Joseph Byron. And I think it's, I love the photograph. These two women, this photograph is perfect for content aware move because these two women are not touching. This would be harder to do if they were even their skirt or they were shoulder to shoulder or something. But look what you can do. And this is not called restoring. This is called retouching, what I'm about to demonstrate. And this is why you need to be careful when you're looking at photographs, because it is getting easier and easier to manipulate photographs. I'm going to move her. And like I did with when I was restoring, I'm going to shrink her down. And I need to look at I should have had this on. Make sure that wait a minute here. Don't apply. I need my tool. Okay, let's do this again. Okay, so now I'm going to do that all over again because I wasn't seeing what my tool was. Shrink her down. Move her in this white spot. And watch here like we did before. She's all gone, except she's down here, and we can easily take care of that by just cloning her out. But this area, you can even keep fixing this shadow so that it blends in better with this background. And this is how you actually would create a fake photograph, because this is, I have made somebody disappear and they should be there. So that content aware move button can restore photographs, but it can also retouch them. Let's see if we can get that shadow just a little bit. So that is that. Are there any questions?
There's just a comment. One nice little comment about the girl with the curl. I think it's a quote out of some prose or some bit of poetry. Underneath that, there's a comment. That's great for deleting unknown people from my travel photographs. Love it.
Well, and I thought of that too, but you can't. That's why I mentioned that they're not touching. It would be really hard if it was some family group and, you've got your hand around everybody's shoulders in a family group. You could probably delete someone from that, but then you've got this arm or part of a hand or something hanging there. And it might look, that section, I'm not sure how that would fill in once you did that. This one was easy because they're not touching. And so I had all this space to work with once I removed that. And it just needs to be, you could clean this up so that this area was a little bit sharper and some of these shadows were sharper, and no one would know that there's a person missing there, because even the woman's shadow, it just kind of blends in with all the other shadows.
Right. So someone asked that little squiggly spot that you last moved, how did you get rid of that spot?
Like this.
Yeah.
Okay, that is, once I click on that green check mark, it leaves a select behind it. So it's left this select, this area is still selected. And in Windows, it's a Control D, to get rid of it. And I think that's probably Command D in Mac. I'm not sure. But Control D gets rid of selects. Anytime you select something you don't want it, just Control D. It's a keystroke, comes in handy.
Okay.
And I have another photograph that I'm not going to work on, but I'm going to show you what can happen and how hard some of this stuff is. This is a photograph of someone we know whose brother was retiring, and she wanted to present a photograph all cleaned up to him for the retirement. And if you look at this, when we zoom in on this, you can see all the problems that are on this. And this took a long time to do, because this one is a 2-day thing. There were a lot of problems here. And no, I don't have the, so this one is different than the other one. This one's a harder one to do. Did you have a question?
No, just someone responding, thanks about the command to get rid of a selection. I was just going to comment that 2 days, would that be like because you needed to take a break from the migraine you were getting working on it, or?
Yeah, this one, oh yeah, you know, when you're doing this cloning stuff, as I said earlier in one of my other sessions, that things look better on the computer. When you start cloning, you really need to print them off, because if you are leaving behind the cursor, if you can see that cursor on a print where you've actually copy pasted, that's what a clone is. It's just a copy paste. You need to go back and fix that area that you can see what you've done. So this one I had to keep printing on. This was an interesting one to do. And I did have to go into doing layers on this one. But anyway, this is the kind of stuff you can occupy your time if you don't have anything else to do.
So it's a pandemic activity.
It is. If you don't like needlework, you can sit there at your computer and clone. It is mesmerizing after a while.
Yeah.
So that's all I had, unless someone's got some questions.
Okay, so someone just popped in a comment for our information. She believes the rhyme about the little girl with the curl was from Mother Goose.
Ah.
And there was a girl who had a curl right in the middle of her forehead. When she was good, she was very good, but when she was bad, she was horrid. So that's from Mother Goose. Any other questions for Kay as she has concluded the demonstration part of the presentation? A question just popped in. How do you fix the nose? I'm assuming the person's referring to this photograph.
This one? Well, this one, you could, yikes. You just kind of start casually looking at that. this is going to be a problem in here, and that's when we have to get into a smaller brush. Because over here, we've got some shadow, and then we've got highlight on the nose. So you need to take that into consideration when you're working on that. And this has got some shadow over here. So it's just a slow process.
Mm-hmm. So we have two questions that popped up here. I'll just read this one verbatim, okay? Can you give us a little lesson on the, in quotes, T to put print on a photo? Again, it's can you give us a little lesson on the T, capital T, to put print on a photo?
I'm not quite sure what.
It's adding text to the photo
Oh, text. Oh,
Okay.
on the draft.
okay. Text is an interesting thing in here. The text tool is right over here. And when I click on it, my text, all my text choices show up. And I would advise creating a layer. Put your text on. It should automatically open a layer. But when I bring my cursor over here and I drag it, then I can just type in text. It depends on what you're doing with text as to whether you actually do it in Adobe Photoshop. If you are going to use the text online or online or on your computer, then this Photoshop would be where you're going to do the text. If you're going to print it, if you're going to make a paper copy, you don't want to do your text in Photoshop. You want to go to a program like InDesign or Illustrator or any of the other vector-based programs so that the text will not be rasterized, because Photoshop is a raster background and Illustrator or something like Illustrator is for vectors, and those make smooth edges. So you need to be careful where you're putting your text and what you're going to do with it. And sometimes, if you're going to, sometimes you'll have two different things in two different programs, one for online and one for printing. If you make a text in here with the font, it may not print with nice, crisp lines.
Thanks. Thank you. Scott makes a comment that Google shows one how to auto-save in Photoshop, so that's good to know. Robin asks, is the content-aware tool a recent addition to Elements? I'm not sure. She says, I'm not sure that she has it in her version.
It should, from what I understand, it came in version 11. I don't have it on mine on my desktop at work, and that's a 9. So it's a version 11 or thereafter. It's not an old one. It's a recent one.
Okay, cool. Another question, do you have any hints for scanning old photographs? Can you scan more than one at a time?
It depends on your scanner and the software that's that you have, but some will allow you to scan, to lay out the photographs, lay a number of them on the flatbed and pick the multiple scanning, but some don't have that option. It depends on the scanner. But some will and some won't.
Okay, thank you. Other questions for Kay? You shared an awful lot of magic with us tonight, Kay, so thank you for that.
Some of it wasn't even cloning.
It's very cool. Hey, so fun fact I thought I would point out is the collage that you created to advertise all of your Adobe classes, the entire series, actually has before and after pictures. You made the before and after pictures.
Oh, did I? Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they're there on our Facebook and then in the MailChimp email I send out.
Oh, okay.
And yes, this will be available for later. We are recording it.
So another participant, Nancy, made a comment. There's a difference between Photoshop and Photoshop Element. She says, I don't see a way to auto-save in Elements. So just another piece of information.
Yeah, and I don't, it'd be interesting to check that out because I've often wanted to have the automatic too. As much as Microsoft irritates me, they do have that automatic save on their stuff. It would be nice to have it in Photoshop. And because I've got the Creative Suite Photoshop and I've got the Elements on my computer, and neither one of those have an automatic.
Okay.
So,
Okay. So Betty made a comment that she scanned 2 photographs. Then as I cropped it, I saved the first one with one name, then went back to the second picture, cropped it, and saved it. So just a comment from Betty. Dolores asked the question, did I, Kurt, say there will not be any webinars next week? Oh my goodness, I did not say that. I'm sorry if I misspoke or misrepresented or wasn't clear, but Dolores, that's a great lead into what's coming up next week. So our 2 programs next week, our Tuesday afternoon program, our colleague Delia Bourne will be talking about state census records. A lot of times we focus on the federal census records, but Delia will be talking about finding and using state census records. That should be an awesome, really useful presentation. Then a week from tonight, we're taking a break from Kay because we wanted to do our typical first Thursday program on DNA. So next week, Allison and Sarah will be teaming up to do one woman's results DNA ethnicity estimate comparisons. Really a neat program. So it could very well be worth your while. And then 2 weeks from tonight, Kay will be back with her 4th of 5 in this Adobe Elements. So we did magic tonight, and then 2 weeks from tonight, we'll be taking photographs apart and putting them back together again. So that sounds like a little magic there too, Kay.
yeah, there is some. Yeah, there are going to be a number of different things that come in handy, and there is going to be some things that will be done in the guided tab on that one. So if you wanted to look at the guided tab.
Cool. So someone asked a question. That last photograph, Kay, that you were playing with, couldn't you move this man onto a new background instead of cleaning up all the blue?
Actually, funny that you should say that because, after I was messing with this area and around up in the hair, I thought, so yes, that was one of my solutions was I removed the background and just put him on a different I put him in a different blue gradient background. And I made part of the gradient this blue here so that it looked fine.
Okay, thank you. So Dolores asks, is Sarah the lady that spoke to us on YA couple of webinars? I don't know, possibly.
The YDNA, yes, she is.
Okay. Anything DNA, Sarah really takes the lead. Neat little story that I don't think Sarah would mind me saying. She and her mother did all kinds of DNA before DNA was really popular. So she's really been at it for quite a long time. Another question, is there enough new stuff, easy fixes to make it worth buying a new edition of Elements? What do you think, Kay?
Well, I don't know. I guess it depends on what version you have. This one's a 2018. I'm really happy with it. I don't know what the next one has. I'm happy with the 2009 that I have on my desktop. The only thing that I don't think I have is the content aware. So, you know, I'm perfectly content with that one.
Okay, very good. Rosalind asks, what is the process to watch previous recordings of Kay's presentations? All of the recorded sessions will eventually appear on the Genealogy's YouTube channel, and you can find that under Genealogy Community YouTube. The department of the library that posts these is not the Genealogy Center, and they have a bit of a time keeping up with us, so it will eventually show up where Allison is showing you right now. Under Genealogy Community YouTube, just click on that and scroll down to where Genealogy is on the library's YouTube page. But we're getting there. I don't think you can jump in if you want to, Allison. I don't think any of Kay's have made it to YouTube yet from this series.
Not yet, but I'm hoping that they'll get there in the next couple of weeks. I've been able to jump a few queues and things have been moving a little faster.
Excellent. Excellent. So Betty made a comment, I just installed 2019 and hopefully will have tried it by the next class. I previously had 2015. So
Oh, okay.
Good deal. Good deal.
My understanding is that there's the changes that they do aren't, that the biggest change came with version 6. And that's a long time ago. And, you know, so they've been doing little tweaks.
Yeah.
Maybe someone should write them about the autosave.
Okay. Thanks so much, Kay. Are there any last questions? It looks like there were a lot of thank yous previously in the chat, so wanted to share those with you, Kay. Another great webinar. Thanks for doing this. Just popped in. If there are no other questions, just wanted to remind you again, thanks to Dolores, I think, for asking this question previously. State Census records next Tuesday afternoon, and then next Thursday evening, 6:30, we'll have our first Thursday of the month DNA presentation. Should be a really good one. Another comment just popped in, Kate. It said, thank you, wonderful presentation.
Welcome.
So thanks to all of you for joining us. We will sign off now. Please mark your calendars for next week. We really enjoy having you with us, and continued success on your family history research. Have a wonderful evening. Thanks.